Hi there, this is Dan Zehr from Coffee with Kenobi, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great poll, kid.
Remember this. Remember this moment. This perfect night. You think I'm crazy?
You've seen the show, and like us, you have questions.
Ooh, that was a good one, but try this one on for size.
No question should be left off your list.
Whoa, I got a crazy theory, but hear me out.
But you better have some spares.
Oh, that was one of mine. All right, let's do this instead.
With me, as always, is my friend and Card Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Cannon.
We've recorded at home and across the U.S.
Last summer, we were from the Boston Common. This week, we're in Chicago.
This is day 3 of celebration.
The show has had many names, but the purpose is the same. Let's share some time at the table.
Ding ding, it's time for breakfast.
Welcome to the Breakfast Pack, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series. A returning Rebel Base Card podcast series that asks more questions than it answers. Today on Breakfast Pack number 104, Questions and/or Breakfast. This is a special episode where we'll take a longer look at Season 2 of Andor and the series in general as it has come to a close. We will be, of course, this summer diving into a second breakfast on single shows of Season 2, but while the fulcrum is still hot, I think it's a good spot for a little extra helping. Who couldn't after this holiday weekend? With me, of course, is my co-host and Card Squadron wingman, Gregory Cass from IonCannon.com. Greg, how we doing?
Very well, very well. I'm excited to be here. I've been living in a post-Andor high where I reread Catalyst, the Rogue One prequel novel, which was a wonderful experience, and just been enjoying all the good coverage of the show. It's been a special Star Wars time, even if it's been an overwhelming Star Wars time. So very excited to be here. Ding ding, it's breakfast time. Didn't want to miss Daz, so.
Thank you. And Daz, as always, appreciates it. But we also brought in somebody special to help us kind of take a look at Andor. And, of course, you all know him, Dan Zehr, of course, the popular Coffee with Kenobi podcast, along with all the other tie-in social media channels, runs the CWK Facebook group, has been talking Star Wars and fostering community. I think now we're in our 12th year, isn't it, Dan?
That is correct.
Oh, my good. Dan,
that is correct.
Welcome back.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I always love when I get that call. I just sit in my little Wayne Manor and I see the Rebel Base Card signal and I race to the Batmobile. I don't have the right keys because I'm not actually Batman, but I still make it to the show. Very, very happy to be here with the both of you.
Yeah, speaking of cars, I'm sure not only does Jay Leno probably have a 2020 Equinox, he probably has a Batmobile.
I hope so. That's one thing I would get if I won the lottery.
Yeah, there'd be like everything, all this, of course, we've got a nice, beautiful new house, barn, and of course, then the Batmobile, and like, even that would be like, yeah, okay, I can see that. I can totally see it. Well, I'll tell you what, we were wanting to kind of take a little broader look, but I'm sure this is a place where better podcasts than mine would talk about opening statements. And Dan, I am going to yield the floor before we kind of dive in. So we have, now you were fortunate enough you got a little early because you get some of the screeners. You may have even been watching again because you took the smart route and was doing one episode per week. But I think that was the way to go. But how do you feel overall about this season of Andor?
So I actually got to see the entire thing about a month before it came out. So I've had a lot of time to kind of think about this. And I've been very excited to hear the two of you talk about it, or other friends talking about it, because I think there's a lot to digest. If I were to take a step backwards, and I've been saying this a little bit on Coffee with Kenobi, but I think this is better than season 1. And I am not like a prisoner of the moment. I try not to be indebted to a recency bias. I really want to try to take a backwards view. You know what I mean? Not a backwards view, but step back, breathe it in, kind of reflect on it. And I think the reason I like this season so much has nothing to do with Star Wars. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's in space. It really doesn't even have anything to do with the Force, besides a couple of fun little things that happen that make you smile. I just think it's an incredibly well told story. There is no wasted narrative beat in any way, shape, or form. There's no filler episodes, which I think is like the laziest form of criticism. It's not even criticism. It's just extraordinarily well told with passionate acting that is truly, without any bias, worthy of Emmy nominations, Emmy wins. And it makes you think. I think, and you know, I've said this a bunch of times as well. Dr. Cass, you are very familiar with Mark Twain, of course, which, by the way, we got to talk. The new
Yeah.
Twain bio. Um, I really think the fiction is at its best when it tells truths in the context of fiction. There's some important things being told here, being said here, being presented here, but I never felt like I was being preached to. I never felt like I was being lectured to. I felt like I was given this canvas of this incredibly powerful story that mirrors so many things that happen in the real world in history, not just the United States, but throughout the world. And Tony Gilroy is able to tell that story with meaningful characters that actually matter. I think it's an absolute standing ovation, and not because it's Star Wars, because it's a story well told. I was telling Mason, look, I would watch this regardless of if it was Star Wars because it's just that well told. And to me, that is a triumph.
Well said. Well said. Dr. Cass, I don't know how you follow that. I'm sure not immediately, but I am kind of curious. Opening statements here.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of piggyback on some of those themes and note that I think in the rush of the moment to get it all watched, I think I've said on our episodes, I was trying to get it watched twice before we recorded, and it was such a marathon that I think it did make me kind of. I still loved every minute of it, but it was just kind of overwhelming in some ways. So it's really nice to be sitting back now a couple weeks removed and kind of, as Dan was saying, like think about this whole work that we got to experience, and think about what it meant as really a novel in so many ways, right? That it didn't play like some of these other great Star Wars shows have as like a movie, but it was intricately woven and it was really carefully. The right metaphor is probably like a watch or something. It's a little cliche, but like it's so delicately put together and everything's just ticking away with purpose and with direction. And that was really clear by the end of it. And I do agree that its magic trick is that it just happens to be in Star Wars, but it really is telling us, deep truths about humanity. And, I went into my literature studies because I took a Intro to Humanities course in my freshman year of college. And I was like, I want to live in this world of ideas, of literature, of history, of philosophy. And this show is doing all of that while also having some of my favorite mythology sprinkled throughout and filling in things like the Gorman Massacre and other, getting General Dodonna's name checked a few times and things like that. So I was trying really hard not to be too superlative when people were asking me about kind of how I felt about the whole run of the show. But I honestly think this is the most important Star Wars of my lifetime. I was born in '83, for context. So certainly, I'm lumping kind of prequels forward into that. I don't know that it will remain my favorite, as it sometimes feels like it is, but I just think for the level of storytelling and for the importance of this work of art, I think it was just masterful. But now you have two
Ugh.
smart things to follow, Greg. What would you like to say?
You know what?
We'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, I know.
I've always wanted to say that.
First time caller, long time listener.
Yes.
It's funny because I think we've talked, whether or not we've talked on Coffee with Kenobi or on other podcasts or ones that I've been on where, I've been fortunate that I have been around long enough that I got to see A New Hope when I was a kid, when I was 7. And as we talked, sometimes we're like, by the time Return of the Jedi comes around, when Dr. Cass was born, I was a teenager. I was a different person. I was in my 20s when the special editions, and then late 20s when the Phantom Menace. I was a parent when Attack of the Clones came out. I remember taking my son on Father's Day to, Revenge of the Sith. And then, of course, Rogue One comes out, like when we get the sequels. And now I'm in my 40s, and, and Rogue One, we get Rogue One, we get Solo, we get all these. And I'm every time we get something like this, it's almost like a different experience. And I know that we've all kind of, some of us who are a little older have kind of like, Rogue One hit a little different. And you're like, wow, this is the kind of the first time that we saw kind of the road rise to meet us. And, when you get Andor, and I think this season, when we started off, and obviously I've had a lot to say about the release order. I mean, like I could beat that horse to death, and don't be surprised if I say it. But it's just something when you kind of look at it, and I took a look back going, man, should I be enjoying it this much? Is it just something where I'm like, man, did I just gorge too much just because there's so much here? I think, Dan, when we were on your show, when we were kind of rating the series, I probably had mentioned about show length. Well, this is one I clearly didn't mention about show length, other than the fact that there was a lot of show to kind of go through. And so, I don't know if I'll ever, when we go back through and do these again and we watch it, it'll be a little different, because it'll just be the single serving where you get to kind of just bask in it and really maybe appreciate it more. I think at this point, I'm just like, wow, it just felt like it went so fast that it was just like, man, I got served all this dessert. I plowed through it. I enjoyed a lot of it. I remembered, but boy, now I don't even remember, but it's like, it just seems like, wow, what kind of Star Wars is going to come out when I'm in my 60s or, Lord willing, 70s or 80s, when it comes out. And so it's just like, it is one that's been a blessing to see all this, but I've been a different person, it seems like, every different time. But it's just like, what a masterstroke this season was, this series was. And I would say, I do agree. I think we have seen, this was one of those big points in the franchise that I don't mind taking some time chewing out about, because I think it's that important. I mean, I kind of agree. When you talk about favorite versus important, boy, that really, that really wants to spark a little debate and a little coffee, a little breakfast, whatever have you. But I'm all here for it. But man, it was so good. Sorry, my it's flashing because now I'm watching Cassian get out and with Luthen, and now it's all this. I should turn this off. It was going on in the background. I wanted to have something going on, but now I can clearly see that my face is like sparkling. Maybe that's just the glow from watching Andor. I don't know. But anyway, and there's Sergeant Linus Mosk. Why wasn't he in season 2? Anyway, I'm going on and on, but I am kind of curious as we I'm curious, Dan, what is, when you kind of took kind of like a larger look back and you went there, what are some questions now that you kind of have, or some questions that you would love us to kind of just start to pick apart? I mean, it's a big serving. There's a lot here. You can start anywhere you wish. But I'm kind of curious.
I wrote 6. I have 6, and I've been thinking about them since the moment Dr. Cass texted us in our little group chat and invited me to come on for this. So I'm excited, and we're going to dig through some turf that we haven't, that you have talked about quite a bit, but I think it's worth revisiting now that we've got the entire catalog to peruse. So does the 4-arc, I'm just laughing because does the 4-arc episode drop throughout a month work to tell the best story in season 2 effectively, or would one episode a week have been more meaningful?
So I one piece of this that I this is not actually directly in response to the question, Dan, my apologies, but one piece that I think keeps getting lost in this conversation is that it was very important that they get all the episodes out by May 30th for the Emmys to be eligible, right?
That's true.
So I think a lot of shows, and I love All Our Friends dearly, have missed that point, that they needed to somehow shorten it to get it out and to be eligible. Because if they had one episode air in June, then it would have been the following August that it was available. So that is a little bit of a fake kind of deadline, but it's something that matters in the entertainment industry. I'm also watching the HBO show Hacks, and the other night they dropped 2. And I was like, why on earth did they all of a sudden drop 2? And I realized it was the same problem. They had to get the last couple out before the deadline. So But Dan, I liked how you phrased that question because it really is about it should be about the storytelling in some ways. And I mean, what is the film industry except the merger of art and commerce? And we all have to deal with the shades of both. But I really think that that is my only complaint about season two is that it was overwhelming, and I think they needed to trust the audience a little bit more. Like, to take away the Emmys thing, the other explanation we've heard is that they worried that the 1 year time jumps might be confusing. And I found that a lot of television studios are starting to underestimate viewers. And there's a lot of good work out there that suggests we're all getting worse and worse at our media literacy. And I take that very seriously. I see it in the classroom. I'm sure, Dan, you do as well. So I take that point seriously. But I do think that a show like this is challenging us and demanding our fullest attention. And frankly, it's exhausting to give it this much of our time. The balance of, like, the 9 p.m. drop here on the East Coast, and then if I only get 2 of those watched, I can't go on social media for at least a day because people are dropping their reactions already. So I think the release schedule did a disservice to the storytelling. Now, the arc structure, would I have watched 10 episodes about each of those years? Of course I would have. But I actually think the structure of the arcs worked in my kind of feelings about the show. You end up kind of questioning how, like, each year only has like 3 really climactic days in these characters' lives. But that storytelling felt to me better than just saying, well, we'll give you the next year and then we'll call it a show, right? But to actually get to fill in right up to the footsteps into Rogue One, to me, was worthwhile, and I think the arcs worked. But I mean, where would we be right now? We'd be on like the 5th episode, I guess, close to where CWK is because of your release schedule. And so, like, it's wild to think about the fun we would have had all year speculating, or all summer, speculating between episodes. I'm excited as I'm listening along with your show, Dan, because there are some that feel like it's often the middle episodes feel like they might not quite have enough to them, at the beginning and ends of an arc. So it's fun kind of really picking them apart as individual episodes. But I I think it should have been just weekly schedule, even if it meant waiting till next spring and starting it in February. Honestly, like I would have been upset, but I think it would have served it better. Greg, do you have any strong feelings about the release?
I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth. Oh my gosh, I have been since episode 1. I've been down like. I think it's a different story if these episodes are 35, 40 minutes, a half hour long, where you could binge them rather quickly. But, we've kind of gotten tied into the corporate structure for Disney Plus and worrying about their bottom line and knowing that, with Acolyte kind of being handed a lot of money and it not really quite panning out, that when you see a show like, Andor, which, in some cases I think has a little less viewership in numbers, that you go, they knew they had a hit on their hands. This was like sending Otani up, but sending him up for every 9 batters. I'm like, at some point, if you were worried about getting it in before the Emmys, you could have started it earlier. I'm like, you have so much more control over it. And I do think that there was a lot that was lost by shoehorning it in, because not only, yes, I mean, one thing I love about Star Wars, especially because we haven't seen it in a theater, is that when they started going to the appointment television for some of the releases, it was more of a shared group experience. Like, everybody got to see it, and it's not so bad if it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, if it's one episode, but everybody got a chance to see it. But what happened immediately, we were fractured. So now we've got even people within our hardcore threads. Some people are watching 1 episode, some people are watching 2. I tried the first week and the 4th week to binge all 3. And, I've got to, go pick up the wife in the middle of it, and you're watching this and you're just trying to get it all in. That I really felt like, I was happy in week 2 and 3 separating the 2nd and 3rd episode, like just trying to take it all in, having a good night's sleep to kind of get up, and then having it to look forward to. And I just really think that there was so much now when I go back, when we do these individual episodes, that you go, oh, wow. That, and the other thing, and we get hung up, I think Star Wars fans, we get hung up on arcs, arcs. they don't always have to be perfect. If you had another, Dan, as much as, sometimes you could tell back when we had, seasons of that were 22, 24 episodes, that, there's a lot of ground in there. But like, if there would have been 4 shows at the end, or, it didn't have to be all evenly done, like 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. There was more than enough story that I do think that some things got missed. And I do think that the introduction, and I'm sure we'll go into it in more detail, of the flashback, for me, I loved it. I just think it took away from some other characters in there that we could have really seen and appreciated even more. And I just think that, what, if you can tell your story in one movie, great, or one show, but don't just try to shoehorn in there and just go, oh, look, it's X number of this and that. As much as a lot of this season and this series took some chances, took some risks that I think really paid off, and I think really we may not see them do that much again. Where everything is, getting ready for the summer movie franchise regurgitation. Yeah, yet another Jurassic World. I swear in that trailer, did I see kids in the Jurassic? I'm like, who's bringing kids back to Jurassic? Anyway, that's another story. Sorry, long take. But I'm just saying, it's just, take some risks. But I just did not really enjoy the way they did it because we're all over the place. It wasn't a shared experience. I'm sorry, Dan?
No, please don't be. I very much knew that I was the laser pointer and you were the cat when we started this.
There.
Look, I agree with both of you. We do have to, if we're going to take this credibly, we do have to consider the Emmy thing because that's a huge part of that. For us, this is, popcorn appointment viewing, but Andor is more like steak. And we have to remember that these are people who dedicated an incredible amount of their lives to creating this. On my review, I put that this was art. This was art. Greg, you mentioned that earlier. This is a complete art form. It's always art, but there's something extra special and extra elevated. The biggest perk about Disney Plus for me, and it started with The Mandalorian, the day that Disney Plus first was a possibility, was the collective viewing experience that you mentioned, because it is appointment viewing. It is that water cooler viewing. It is that excitement that generates. I always felt that Stranger Things, for as incredible as Stranger Things is, misses so much opportunity because they just drop a bunch at once. Those things are so powerful that you could have people buzzing for months and months. And that's the same with season 2 of Andor. The Dr. Cash, you mentioned the thing about how every 3 arcs there's like a year between, and we'd heard about that for a long time. I don't think you could, at least I can't, accurately or definitively find beats in any of those 12 episodes that show me a year has passed between everything. I think that's sort of a cursory thing to make us feel better about how we're digesting it. Besides the fact that Cassian and Bix are, suddenly like living in this different area and they're going to this really cool little grocery store sort of a thing. I don't think you see that very much. I think, thank goodness, like I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. I don't take any of it for granted. The fact that I got to watch them way before they came out was an immense blessing to me. When I got all 12 of them, I didn't watch them in one day. I don't have time for that. Like I have a family. I'm in grad school. I've got papers to grade. I'm preaching the choir here with you guys. So I couldn't do that. And I wouldn't have done that even if I could, because I don't want to burn through this. I mean, imagine taking like this beautiful piece of the best cut of steak that's marinating for amount of time, or this bottle of wine you've been keeping for so long, and then the chef comes out and says, "By the way, you got 5 minutes. Eat it. Drink this wine. You got 5 minutes." Yeah, I would say that I find the whole thing fraudulent. I really do. I know that's a strong term, but I really do. I feel like this is the best Disney Plus thing that they've had for Star Wars since season 2 of The Mandalorian. And I feel like to rob us of that experience, I can't imagine the creatives were happy about it. And if it's purely about an Emmy nomination, okay, that's fine. As a selfish viewer, that's not important to me. What's important to me is the story. And we got an incredible story, meaningful story, an important story that worked. I personally don't think the flashback detracted. I don't think there was anything missing. I very much have the Jaws mentality of less is more. I thought it all worked. I think it would have worked even better if I got to watch one episode a week. If you want to drop two at a time, even that's because, as we've been saying, and that's why I did this for the podcast for Coffee with Kenobi, I'm only doing one a week because I'm not beholden to a corporate objective. And what I am beholden to is telling a good story, both as a fan, both as an educator, and whatever else hat I might be wearing at that time. Just like so many of us. And when I heard all of your horror stories about, I had to watch all three last night. I'm super tired, but at least nothing was spoiled. You guys, Father Jimmy, there's so many people that said the same thing. And I just thought, that stinks. Like, this is fantastic storytelling, and you have to consume it really fast, like you're some sort of ravenous wolfhound. It's not fair. I don't think it's fair to the creatives. I don't think it's fair to the fans. I don't think that it's fair to the content creators. And look, they have no obligation to any of us. And I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying personally for me, I thought it was a substantial misstep, and I was really bummed out by it. It's the only misstep of this whole thing of season 2. And it probably had nothing to do with the creative people behind it.
Yeah, and I would say, as Tony Gilroy kind of explained it, it seemed like it was really out of his hands, and it came very late in the process. It sounded like he had locked everything and then was informed about it, which just underscores what you said about it being such a shame. I
feel bad to be so strong and harsh about it, but I got to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a little more dismal. In between Andor season 1 and Andor season 2, the streaming environment changed dramatically, right? And the budgets are not going to go back to where they were, period, because Disney needs this to be much more profitable. And if Acolyte had cost half as much, we'd be in season 2 by now. Absolutely, they'd continue on. But when those budgets got so high, I think it feels like a devil's bargain. They said, okay, you can keep your budget for this season, but we gotta make a full court press for the press, and Gilroy on talk shows, and that's what unfortunately creatives have to do, because it is their art, but it is the commerce of a major corporation, as you said, Dan. So it is certainly a shame, and I'm just afraid that it'll never be this good again. And this is the peak we hit, unfortunately.
And wouldn't it have been great? I don't know if you guys would have been able to do it. I don't know if I would have either, but what if we could have somehow disciplined ourselves to only watch one episode a week for 3 months? Would that have been possible? Wouldn't that have been cool?
Yeah. Your point was exactly right. I have never had a good conversation about Stranger Things, because you get in a room with fans and they're like, which one are you on? Oh, you're only on 2. I'm on 4. Oh, I watched them all the first night. And then you don't even bother talking about it because you're all in a different spot.
And 2 days later, you're talking about something else. You're wasting quality content. It's really, the more I think about it, the more I'm the cat.
Well, Dr. Cass, what would be your...
Well, so my first 2 on my list, I have a really easy one and a really hard one. So I'm going to ease you in, right? That's the quiz. The quiz question that comes first makes you think you're prepared, and then I'm going to hit you with something a little surprising. So, just quite kind of simply, I think I alluded to this in our last recording, but I'm interested to hear you all give your top 2 or 3, if you got to be a little sneaky, characters in terms of either season 2 or the entire run. Because for me, giving you a moment to think, I will just say the legacy of this show to me is that when you empower a really good creative and let him cook, he comes up with some of the most memorable characters. And it's not all just Tony Gilroy. It's the performers and it's the staff writers. But I can, if I'm challenged to name my favorite Star Wars characters at the moment, I'm a little shocked by how many are from Andor at any given moment. So I will limit you to 3 maximum of characters that really are the standouts for you across the show that worked best for you.
I got a feeling you know what 2 of them are mine.
Oh, I think this is easy. Go ahead, Greg.
Gosh. I would say probably to start off with, because I know I have, if we were doing a draft, a couple of my draft picks are probably pretty safe. But I would say Cyril Karn really stepped it up in this episode. And going back and watching some of him in season one, and you see where this, it goes from just kind of being a bit comical and how serious he is with the corporate, the security, and while everybody else is like, oh, come on, dude. And he's just like, no. And then, of course, he takes the perfect drug, which is Sergeant Linus Mosk, who just feeds this. But then you see him in season 2 when he really gets in. The highs of the highs, right? When he's getting patted on the head by Partagaz, to where he is strangling Deidre Miro, or when he is fighting Cassian, and that last little bit where Cassian was like, "Who are you?" and it shook him. I thought the character was fascinating just because it's just something, and you couldn't quite peg it. And I just really think that the actor, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the actor's name at the moment.
Kyle Soller.
Kyle just did such a marvelous job because it's just so nuanced, just like with all the characters in this. But I really thought what a very tragic tale, but I really thought you saw such an amazing stretch. And it just, like I said, it keeps getting amped up. It just keeps getting one click more on the volume. And that would be for me my number one. So I don't know how we're doing. Are we alternating, or are we just going through the whole list?
Yeah, let's do that. That's fun. I hadn't thought of it that way, but let's do draft picks. But you can repeat if you need to.
Fair enough.
If we're doing our favorite one first, mine's Clea. I didn't expect it. I think she was fascinating and understated, but that you knew there was such a quiet intensity there. And in season 1, you kind of had to put the pieces together for yourself, and she kind of fell off the radar for me. But in season 2, even before the flashback, I was so intrigued by her fieriness, the fact that she was controlling things. I think it works so beautifully. I believe in episode 5, when she's having to try to remove the bug, for lack of a better word, underneath that table. Her hand is bleeding, and just that whole sequence was, I even have goosebumps now thinking about it. It was so tense. And Elizabeth Dulau is the actress, and she's phenomenal. And her sacrifice at the end, and the emotion, and the fact that she's kind of a shell of herself at the end because she's lost her father figure. I just thought she's amazing. So absolutely. Clea is my number one.
I completely agree. I did a season 1 rewatch right before the premiere, and it was like, I was like, oh right, Clea. Like, I'd completely forgotten she was on the show, and now she's so high up in my rankings on the show because I agree with everything you said. Just want to underscore it's Dulau's, like, basically her first role, first professional role. That's incredible.
Jeez.
And unbelievable, like fresh out of drama school. And I'm sure we'll be seeing her in many things to come for a long time. I'm gonna go with the only place I can go, which is Mon Mothma, which, again, I wish I had that time machine and would go talk to Greg walking out of the special edition of Return of the Jedi in the movie theaters and be like, that woman in that one scene, you're gonna like be blown away by her someday. And just I just really love that, look, people tease George Lucas all the time, but one of his skills is casting, right? He has support and he has people picking out the people, but the fact that Genevieve O'Reilly came from such humble scenes that I'm sorry, but with all due respect, those scenes are not very good. There's a reason they're on the cutting room floor in Revenge of the Sith, and then came through to just be absolutely incredible. And I loved all the episodes, as I've made very clear on the show by inventing new sizes of Pringles cans. But I will say that the image for me of season 2 will always be Mon Mothma dancing, and just that reckless abandon of, like, the cost has just gotten too high and she can't bear it, and she's just gonna drink a lot and just give up to the dance one last time before it all just fades away. And I really loved her performance. Of course, the speech, which we knew would be iconic, and I think had high expectations for me personally and lived up to them. That I have already seen many a meme created of a still from that and a quote from that, and I think it's speaking to people really deeply in this kind of age of AI and not being sure at all what truth is, and the fact that that's weaponized against us from all different sides. Speaks a lot to my day job, so I'm very appreciative of that and of what it wants to teach us. So that's my number one. Maybe shorter. Just give 2 and 3 honorable mentions if you have to. Greg, you can go first.
Well, as much
I
as
mean, we know one of them for sure.
yeah, I was gonna say now, and I'm trying not to be smart about it because, of course, Edie Karn has a special place in my heart, just because a character that almost shouldn't even be there, but is pulled off so greatly. And I think there's no better moment for me than in season 2 when in that room that looks like they make Intel chips from, there is this bright orange dress, and it just such a great start. But I would say if I'm going to go a mother in this one, then I would say it'd have to be Marva, true mother of the rebellion, because in it's just rewatching some of season 1, she is a complete badass, and just really takes no guff, and really is just and the scenes are just incredible. And of course at the end with her funeral piece where she's just like basically the Empire really kind of kicks it off, and I just really think that She was just a masterstroke through that first season, and even seeing her picture in some of the early shots in season 2 where they're in that sort of that harvester campground, as it were, just kind of remind you like, man, it would have been nice to have seen maybe seen her through more of it, but boy did she burn brightly in her scenes there. Lastly, if I'm just going to say third, I'm just going to throw in here one of the reasons why I harp so much on Sergeant Linus Mosk is because even in a small character that is written, I love the flaws that are in people. That just that little bit, and I would love to ask him. He's going to be at London Film Comic Con, and I really want to ask him the whole deal with the flask. Was that something he came up with? Just that little weakness, that just like as much as he sits there and just goes this and this, there's just that showing that almost that. There's just a little bit of like, there's something that's not quite right. And it almost feels like that's something as that I think anybody can kind of relate to. It's like it's easy to be the hero and say all the right things and all the right lines, but it's something also when you're like, no one's around, you're going, all right, I'm not quite completely 100%. And that just always fascinates me when I see that. So just for that reason alone, and yes, there's a lot of great characters that I just passed over, but I just love it when these little characters with just great moments and flaws and just how well written down to the nth, the NPCs as it were in this series are just written so well.
Agreed, and I'll try to go pretty quickly. I think the best part about this is I think more than any other Star Wars Disney Plus show, this is an ensemble that speaks. There aren't any weak spots. There aren't any others per se either, but they just work together so beautifully to tell the best story. But my number 2 and 3 are Cyril Karn and Mon Mothma for lots of reasons. I think the fact that I care about Cyril, and that fact that when he passed, or the way his insides were constantly being stabbed by the people he worshipped. And then Mon Mothma adds such gravitas and importance and hope, and she is more Emmy deserving than anybody in this entire cast, in my opinion. No disparagement to the others, but she just is heads and tails wonderful. And it's just sad that they had to give her that bad haircut at the end, but that's not her fault.
Ouch.
Yeah, those canon connections really bring you down sometimes. Well said. And to Dan's point, it's like I feel bad whenever I list characters. I often don't get down to Cassian and Diego Luna, and it's a flawless performance, and it's really well done. But it just speaks to the fact that the title character isn't the focal point necessarily. It's the ensemble as a part of this. I'm gonna relegate my answers to season 2. My love of Brasso and Nemec is well established, but they kind of weren't involved as much this season. But that's okay. So I will throw in Ben Mendelsohn coming back and just chewing the scenery. I still that scene where he comes in to interrogate Dedra, and you only see the bottom jaw, and then he puts his finger on his head is just it's a masterstroke, and I think we're really lucky to have him back, and he was really wonderful. And I want to throw out just a mention to Val, the scene where Cinta has been killed and she confronts the man whose fault it is. You know, probably the only real standout moment, although her last episode and they cheers, drinks and toast the fallen is also very good. But I thought that was incredible. Like, you're gonna carry this with you forever is something. I don't know. Every time somebody cuts me off in traffic, that's what I'm gonna shout at them from now on.
You know, or every time my wife gets mad at me, it's like she doesn't have to physically hurt me. It's the words and you're like, yeah, man, that cuts cold. Something I kind of wanted to start with, you know, we saw, you know, we're in this period of the Empire and at the beginning of the Rebellion, and I'm kind of curious, and maybe we saw a little bit of this with Rogue One, but it might have been hit more, and I think it might have been emphasized with, has your opinion of the Rebellion or the Empire changed after seeing Andor? We got to see a lot of the inner workings and how things were put together and how things maybe weren't exactly as clean and easy. But now looking back, has your thoughts on either of these two entities really changed? And how? Show your work. Sorry.
I would say amplified. I wouldn't say it changed. I say it amplified it, because especially since Disney became driving the YT 1300 Carillion Light Fighter, which is the Star Wars Millennium Falcon, the focus of the evil that is the Empire and the cruelty and the subjugation, and the fascist mentality, they have not hidden that. Like, it's been clear. It's presented in such an extreme, implausible way, like I think the First Order is sometimes portrayed. There's a little bit more of a delicacy to it, not in what they do, but why and how they kind of get everybody into their propaganda. It's not just about, oh, we really want peace, but we want order. It's more like they're trying to explain, you know, they make in the finale of season 2 of The Mandalorian, Cara Dune has this great interaction with this Imperial pilot, and they're mocking each other about the death of Alderaan versus the explosion of the Death Star, and which Death Star did you lose all your friends on? It amplifies it. It shows it, but here we get even more of a personal touch, and I think what's great about it is that I think we have to remember, hate the sin, love the sinner. There are some Imperials in this that are despicable, but at the end you feel slightly bad for like 2 seconds for Daedra. Cyril, you feel horrible for. Partagaz, I feel bad for. There are moments, there are people where you realize sometimes people are just stuck, and it doesn't excuse it, but you understand there's more to the picture than just this little tiny thing in the frame. It's hard to look at the picture when you're inside the frame, but there's so much more that goes into it. And as far as Rebellion, it helps to emphasize, much like Rebels did, but this even more, how hard it is to spin all those plates and hope to the Lord above that everybody somehow comes together and they want to work together. We saw in the first 2 episodes of the season, when you got a couple of groups together and there's no leadership and there's different reasons why they do what they do, it just causes chaos and anarchy and death and destruction. So the fact that we have Luthen, who is certainly, many people in the Rebellion don't look at him as a hero, but some sort of a conniving, backstabbing, untrustworthy. He had to be that way in his mind. He had to be that way to make things happen so Luke could fire that shot. So if anything, as much as I love Star Wars, the original Star Wars, it's almost like cotton candy compared to this. As bad as the Empire is, yeah, they destroy Alderaan, but I think we're not being fully honest with ourselves. I mean, when we saw that for 20, 30 years, we didn't think, oh my gosh, this whole culture is gone. Most likely like, oh geez, Princess Leia's planet got blown up. Oh, what's next? Right? This gives it the impact and the weight and the gravitas that I think speaks to the war in Star Wars. And that's a line I use a lot. And I apologize for leaning up, but I think it's important. So, yes.
Love it.
I'm envious that you coined amplified because I think that that nicely captures it. I will just add on the Empire side, I also found the Empire scary. And I don't often find them scary. I think, the jokes about stormtroopers not being able to hit the broadside of a barn, kind of linger because they are pretty ineffectual in a lot of their appearances in media. But the two I would point towards are the TIE fighters on Aldhani and the way they
Yes.
screamed through those canyons. Never had occurred to me how terrifying that would be to a local population that, that terror from above. And then the stormtroopers on Gorman were really terrifying. And the way they just kind of formed that wall around the plaza and you start to appreciate what's been baked in from the beginning, which is, part of why the Empire used the stormtroopers is so you couldn't recognize them. They were a faceless enemy and you couldn't, that's not the brother you have who signed up for the military. It's just the face of the Empire. And George had all those elements. And then I think Rogue One and then this show really pushed some of those into a scarier place in front of it. I will admit, Dan took the serious answer. So the jokey one is you now watch A New Hope and you watch that medal ceremony and Luke and Han are getting their medals and you just have to imagine who's in that crowd, right? That Vel's standing there being like, these guys, Williman's like, what? That Luke guy just showed up. Like he only got a ship because Red 5 died over Scarif. So it does recast it a little bit, but the true answer is what you said, Dan. I completely agree, which is that it enriches the rebellion and it makes it show that, we all might dream of being Luke Skywalker, but we'd probably be more of a grunt working in the small parts, not getting to be the grand hero. And so it shows you that that's what rebellions are built on. It's a community, it's teamwork, it's everybody contributing to their part to the movement and to the effort. And I think that's a really powerful message, and it speaks a lot to me anyway, across this.
Interesting. In seeing
that.
in seeing the you're talking about the massacre on Gorman, where you see it really instead of seeing that that miles high view where Alderaan's blown up and then all you really get is Obi-Wan Kenobi somewhere else kind of going, oh man, something bad's happened. Where with Gorman, you saw it right in your face, and it was dirty. It was bloody. The K2 droids are going in and just tossing people left and right, and you just really see this brutality that it's. I think only Andor could really, pull off. Whereas a lot of times, even like if you go to like Rebels, we all loved Rebels, but a lot of those Imperial officers could be just a little, bumbly fumbly, or they're just kind of one note. Where here you see a lot more nuance, and even so far as like when Krennic is going, Leo, I can't save you this time. Where it just said all this about that relationship between him and Partagaz, and just how far it might have gone back, and all that, and just all this. And so in some cases you see, like you're saying, Dan, a bit of amplification, but just sort of on a ground level. Whereas, I think in some cases when let's say we flash forward on the rebellion side, we're seeing these folks that really can't agree, and there's a lot of back and forth. I think that's a better bridge to where, when we get to like, let's say Ahsoka and some of these series in Mandalorian, where the rebellion, the New Republic seems almost comical in a way. It sort of is now. It's got it can't handle things well, and you're thinking like this is to me a little better bridge to get to that, because a lot of folks coming off of the OT going, well, they blew up the Death Star. Now it's the Empire's gone, Republic's go off into the sunset, and now and instead of seeing where they were trying to get maybe in the sequels and all that, where it's just not working that well, and this is how the First Order, which Dan, you're right. It kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's not really earned yet. Maybe there's a story out there that we'll see the formation of the First Order, and we'll go, man, if that story had been told, now I can go back and watch, Hux and not chuckle a bit. But still, for me, I think I get a little more of where the New Republic kind of comes from, because I think there is some carryover of where, we're lucky that the Death Star plans were taken because some of the rebels just said, F it, we're going, and we're going to go get them. And everybody else said, all right, there's a leader, go follow them. But now you start to see, like, day 2, 3, and 4, where you go, it's still kind of a mess. And, in Empire Strikes Back, the fleet's not there. Everybody else on the ground is with one big cannon. But then you see, one big happy fleet again in Return of the Jedi. So it is kind of nice where, you do see how they can show these two entities with their flaws and their victories at the same time. It's really fascinating that we get this more nuance, and I think this is a nice glue or a base of a stew that a lot of story can spring from, and now it can kind of connect to some of these other things and make them go down a little easier when you're going back and rewatching some of this.
Hear, hear.
I think it's back to you, Dan.
Okay. This is an unfair one, so I'm just going to apologize in advance.
I love unfair questions.
Rank the arcs from season 2.
Fires up Disney Plus. Flip, 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 flip.
So
yeah.
I was hoping that the final arc would really be like just the perfect keystone capstone. But it didn't quite get there for me. So I it's a little easier for me to go from favorite to least favorite. And I would say favorite would be 7, 8, 9. The 2 episodes of the Gorman Massacre followed by Mon Mothma in the Senate. I think that to me is the peak of the season and the series. Despite my great love of Kino Loy and the Narkina 5 and of Marva on Ferrix, I think Gorman and the Mon Mothma episode came in number 1. Then I would follow that with the finale arc. But my favorite of those 3 is the Clea episode at the Lena So hospital, which just still makes my little High Republic heart so happy. So I will put that at second, and the build up right into Rogue One. And then I think I have to go the first one and then the second one. The second arc does a lot of good work to establish Gorman and to set up what's to come, but I think it stands on its own a little less well than some of the others. I'm not a huge fan of the Bix is in the apartment watching morning TV and doing drugs arc. It just felt a little like, to me, those themes are a little too serious to treat jokily, and yet they didn't have the time to treat them seriously. And I'm a little sensitive to that. I have addiction in my family, so I'll cop to that. But that first arc was a great return. I do love Brasso's heroic moment, even if I was sad it took him out. I also think the Wheat Planet Mira Rao is really spectacularly done. So I like returning to that arc a little bit and experiencing that. So, Greg, just so you can be aware, that ranking from, let's go from the bottom. So 2, 1, 4, 3 was my order.
2, 1, 4, 3. All right.
And I can give you mine if you want to take a little more time to think about it.
Go for it.
Okay, I would say the third arc is clearly, like, those 3 episodes. That is the time capsule. That is the best. If anything ever is better than that in terms of production value, performance, build up what you need the previous episodes and the previous season to get to that point, and the execution and the emotional beats. When I watched episode 8, I literally closed my laptop and I put my hands on my head and I put my head between my knees like I was going down in an airplane. And Deanna goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "You can't believe what I just saw." And I don't react like that typically. So it's the third arc, then the second, and then the fourth, and then the first. I mean, I think the second arc is why the third arc is so good, because of that build up. The fourth arc was fine, but it was sort of a little anticlimactic, in which we may get to, especially after 7, 8, and 9. I don't think any would have been fair for anything to follow 7, 8, and 9. And the first one, I thought the second episode of the first three was good. I liked it better the second time I watched it, as I mentioned on the podcast. But those reminded me more of the tone of season 1, which I liked but didn't love.
Boy, this is tough. I would say once I get past arc 3, what hasn't been said already between the two of you, I just think it's some of the most intense, it's some of the most disturbing. It's once again, I was very happy to take that break between the second and the third one. Mm-hmm. And I would say, as much as it's hard to follow that, episodes 10 and 11 of the fourth arc really get us almost there. It's the 12th episode that starts to fall apart a little bit because of how they did it. Doesn't make me love it any less, but I really felt that, I don't know how they can come out of this, but I felt 10 and 11 did a really great job of keeping that momentum going. It's just at the end, like I said, could we have had a little more and done a little differently? In my opinion, yes, but still wonderful there. But I would say, I think the first arc carried by episode 1, and really the tragedy of, Brasso at the end. And of course, growing up near a farm, Mina Rao really hits me pretty close. So I would say it's probably my second one. I would probably put the fourth one at the end. But yeah, I would say if I ended up saying that the third arc is my favorite and the fourth is my least, then I still win. At any rate, you can.
I think that's cool. I think we all had a bit of a different ranking, which I did not expect.
All right. My promised hard question. So
Sweet.
on Long Take Review, we have a segment we call Thesis Please, which actually originated because Colby of the Colby Cast told us we needed to start having Thesis Please, and it's Partagast who comes on and says Thesis Please when we start it.
Yes.
So I'm gonna ask Star Wars author Dan Zehr to put on his editor's hat for now and edit and correct my thesis. So here's my thesis on Star Wars writ large, is that I think Star Wars is struggling right now between two poles. On the one hand, it wants to challenge us and to ask more of us and to push us deeper into challenging our assumptions and our values in the ways that real mythology can. And on the other side is nostalgia. And I think modern Star Wars is kind of stuck between these two things of challenging us to do new things and to think new things, and also reminding us of what made Star Wars great and what made us fall in love with it. I'm not pitting shows against each other, but I would suggest that Andor trafficked in the challenge lane and tried very hard to ask us to reimagine ourselves and to re-examine who we are and the assumptions we make in Star Wars in real life. And I would say something more like Skeleton Crew or Ahsoka is like, hey, remember these really fun things and these characters you love so much? Like, isn't it cool when spaceships go zoom? And that I just want to be clear. I'm being a little unfair to those other shows. So my question to the two of you is, what do you think of this thesis? And for you, what do you think you could prescribe to Star Wars? Should they lean a little more into one or the other? Do they have to mix the two? How do we get somewhere between challenge and nostalgia?
I couldn't love this question more. I feel bad, Greg. It's your show. I keep talking first. It's bad. It's a bad habit. Just ask my wife.
I always put the guest before us.
Look, I think your thesis is astute, and I think what we're talking about here is a failure to communicate, to quote, because I think Star Wars has become something. This has been happening for a while. We have cast a very large net, and it's hard to kind of catch those things. And I don't know that Star Wars suffers from nostalgia so much as popular culture does. I mean, how many remakes have we had over the past 15 years of things where you bring in the old cast? Star Trek, Ghostbusters, Karate Kid, Mission, and everything is like that. And look, I'm one of the people, like the two of you, who will be one of the first people in line to see it because I love it. I love it. Now, do I need it to be nostalgia driven to bring me in? I would say yes and no. I'm not opposed to new stories. In fact, I want new stories. I want to be challenged. I want to think. But I also like spaceships going zoom zoom. Like if pressed, and it really wouldn't be much of a press, but more barely even a pinch. Like I prefer the fun stuff that has some serious themes, but we're focusing on the Force and lightsabers and incredible special effects. And the reasons I sat in a theater uh, 30, 40 times to watch the original Star Wars film in the 70s and 80s. Like that's what I want. That's the Star Wars I like. That being said, I embrace and welcome the more challenging aspects of Star Wars. But I think we're sort of at this unusual crossroads. I think for one thing, if you are a creative, the last thing you should do, the last thing you should do is make Star Wars that you think people want to see. That's a massive mistake as a creative because you can't please everybody. You shouldn't try. The focus should always be on the story. The story is what matters. Nothing else matters. Now, a good story is going to tell you things. It's going to make you think. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you feel. It's going to make you relate somehow to some part of your life. Now, I can't relate to, a burgeoning rebellion, but can I relate to doubting and knowing when to speak my mind in the face of an obstacle? Of course. Who can't? On various degrees. Whether that's something that's like, hey, you can't take that colored pencil. That's the one I wanted. Back in first grade or something like that. All the way to something much more monumental and important. So I think we fall into this crazy trap because I think Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, that was about a good story, an interesting story. But once we get down and bogged down into, because I don't think the creatives are worried about how it ties into the mythology. That's what the story group's for. I think they're trying to tell a good story. I think they're trying to get their ideas from their brains to the silver screen or the screen that's, in your hands that you carry around in your pocket all the time, or maybe to a degree to a novel or a comic book. So I think if Star Wars is only about nostalgia, then you don't have anything because you don't have a good story. And I think if it's trying to make you think, but there's no story to it, then it becomes pretentious and overwrought and uninteresting. I think you've got to have a special sauce. And I don't think Andor has that special sauce. I think it's pretty hard to find that special sauce. Andor is the ultimate steak dinner. I keep using that very crude analogy, and it's tremendous. But if everything was Star Wars like that, I don't know. I mean, that's why I think I go back to The Last Jedi because I love that. I think that is a work of complete and utter genius. It's exceptional storytelling. But in that same breath, if other people don't like it, I don't care if they like it. It doesn't affect me at all. It doesn't affect me at all. One of the biggest things that students say when they first walk into my class and they see the Star Wars posters, and Greg, you've seen my classroom several times. That one of the first things I get is this look of like, oh my gosh, I don't like Star Wars. Mr. Zer's going to be mad. And what I tell them is, look, it's okay if you don't like it. There's plenty there for me to enjoy. Mrs. Zera is not her favorite thing, but she loves me. So that's good enough for me. Like, we're not going to have a one size fits all, and we shouldn't. But when you take the boundaries and the barriers of what Star Wars is and push them a little bit to tell a good story, and you think in the process, well, that's my favorite. But if it's only purely to try to teach me something, and I don't think Andor did that, as I said at the beginning of the show, I think that's a misstep too. That was a word salad, so I apologize.
It was a good one, though. Caesar salad, as it were.
Something everybody can eat. The one thing that as I get older and I start to, it's something that everybody can relate in, whether you like Star Wars or not. It's like, you tend to like the music and the popular culture and the movies of a certain time when you're growing up. And sometimes I find when I come across, folks I know, and that's the only thing they listen to, that's the only thing they watch, and I'm like, that's great. I go back. I have a huge '80s playlist. I go back and I watch a lot of the OT. I love watching Light and Magic talk about making Star Wars. I could watch that day in and day out because it bring that's the nostalgia for me. It's like remembering how great it was when I saw it. but I do not want my fandom to be set in amber. And one of the things I kind of enjoyed, and this was taking there was a period of time I take my daughter to school. It's one of the things I enjoy. There's no bus riding here. I'll take you in. But sometimes it's fun to hey, take off the headphones, throw on the Spotify playlist that you have, or throw on, music, and let me experience something as you're experiencing it right now in the time that it's really most important to you. And a lot of times I find it may not be my favorite thing, but it's, this is kind of neat. And then, of course, when my daughter all of a sudden discovers things like, Rob Zombie and Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park, you go, oh, yeah, I remember that when it came around the first time, and it was kind of fun. So I like being open to things, and I like being challenged. I may not understand. Like I said, I thought the High Republic was an amazing undertaking, and everyone who dove in enjoyed it immensely. I got in a little ways. I know there'd be more there, but it's always going to be there for me if I really want to dive in. But I appreciate what it means to so many people. And it doesn't have to be if I don't get into a Disney Plus series or I don't get into a movie, there's nothing, I don't think I'm less of a fan, or I won't think less of anybody else if that wasn't your bag. As a matter of fact, every time I find from somebody I meet, when I find out they like that particular character from that, it makes my heart smile, because I just love the fact that someone's passionate about something, whether it's the prequels, whether it's the sequels. I mean, there will be some people who go, you know what, Rise of Skywalker was my bag, and I hope I'm around long enough to hear it. It may take a while for some of that stuff, but hey, it's all there. I'm just happy that I get more Star Wars. But I do think that we run a risk, especially in kind of the corporate way that we are, that it gets to be a law of diminishing returns, and we won't get people trying to push the boundaries, or those boundaries won't get approved because it doesn't make enough money. We saw that, Mission Impossible, 8. I think it's 8 now, right? Final Reckoning, which I saw way too late in the day yesterday. That there's a time and a place for it, but I go, you know what? I see a promo for Jurassic World yet again. I don't know what the title is. I don't really care. But it's just oh my God, can we...
Final Dominion or...
Rebirth.
Rebirth.
A movie ago. Yeah.
But, we've also seen...
Just pump the brakes on the Jurassic. Remember, that is Gareth Edwards of Rogue One directing that. So that's the name getting me to the theater.
Scarlett Johansson. Yes. It's fine. I mean, for what it is, but you just kind of go, why going back there? But, if we didn't learn any... I'm just ashamed we didn't learn, The Force Awakens did suffer a little bit the same way Star Trek Generations suffered a little bit. It's too much crammed in there. The way Rise of Skywalker suffered a little bit. You know what? Challenge us, and I think, like I said, I think when you go back and look, I love, like with Last Jedi, yeah, challenge me. Let's try something else. Turn it on its head, because if anybody watches the document that goes along with that, they cared so much about trying to make that. And any one of these things, that's why I wish they why isn't there a gallery, this moment of X, Y, and Z? They've sloughed off a little bit on it, when I'm have some intern just record video and we'll watch it. As much time as I'm watching, Light and Magic over and over again, I can't get enough of it. It's just amazing to watch. But like I said, if you're not challenging me, I'm gonna atrophy. I'm I already got enough blubber on my body already. I don't need more in my mind. Let's try something new, and let me go look forward to seeing some more Star Wars out there.
Well, and I don't think I have much to add because, any podcast where we get 3 people singing the praises of Last Jedi is just a good night for me, and one I love to see it. But I do want to say, because I've been so superlative about Andor, I actually don't want Andor flavored Star Wars again, maybe in 10 years or something, but certainly not in the meantime, because it's that fine dining that you can only have once in a while. It's the anniversary dinner, which I need to book a reservation for, and then we'll be back at the local bar for pub night the next week. So I do think that it is really important that Star Wars needs to start being all things. And it's been a funny transition moment I have a really good Star Wars friend here in town, Carl from the Wampa's Lair podcast. And I would say he and I like very rarely agree on any single piece of Star Wars. He loves Acolyte. I love Andor. He didn't think Kenobi was that good. I would, die for Ewan McGregor still. So it's funny because there was a time when you were just a Star Wars fan and you all agreed, like, yep, this is my thing. These 3 films, these few books are my thing. And we're in this moment where it's okay to have that negotiation. I'm sure you've both had it where you meet somebody at a con and you're like, so which Star Wars do you like? Like which part of fandom? And you meet somebody who's way into the animation and I say like, I respect the animation, but I can't name the episodes. I don't know those side characters from that. Or somebody who just loves the music or somebody who just is a cosplayer. And like it's really beautiful. And I think Dan said it exactly right. The problem is when you try to please all of us on every single thing. And I believe that is some of the flaws of the Rise of Skywalker. But Greg, you said it right. Like, also, you watched the documentary of the making of Rise of Skywalker. They weren't out to be shabby. They put their heart and souls into every frame of that film, and you have to respect it. So definitely, I think the balance, as Dan said, is a mix of the two. And it might just be a pendulum. And we swung into challenge for a little while. And we got to swing back into nostalgia. With some Ryan Gosling in a Starfighter, I guess or no, Mando and Grogu is first. So, Greg, you must have another question as we approach the end of our promised deadline for Dan. So, what do you got?
All right, let me see if I can and get us forward a bit because I am curious about. We've said it. This was a seminal moment for Star Wars, but what do you think the real impact of this show is going to be on the next set of Star Wars we either see or is announced? Like you said, it's fine dining. This is a steak. We get this. But this has to have some kind of impact on future Star Wars, good or bad. And I'm just kind of wondering, do you see like a guy in a writer's room just kind of taking what he saw Andor, he takes his steno book and just crumples it up and puts it in there and starts over? Or am I wishful thinking about what the impact of this is? I mean, for as short as it shone brightly, what do you think's gonna happen? And how are we gonna view Mando and Grogu the movie differently because of this? What's the impact of this?
No, we're not. We're not, because it's a different thing. It really is. The Star Wars creatives, in my opinion, they want to tell a good story. They've got a lot of great ideas, but we have to keep in mind, and I don't want to spoil the stew before it comes out of the oven, but does stew go in the oven? I'm not a cook. A lot of these things, like there are ideas and stuff that we don't know about that are already 4 or 5 years out, that are already planned, that are already in the books, they're already happening, right? So it's not, if there is an impact, we won't see it for a reasonable amount of time. That being said, I would take that question and flip it and say, should it have an impact? And I would say the impact it should have, if we want to use that, is I think what you need to remember, you being like Disney and Lucasfilm, is Tony Gilroy is the reason this show is successful, and his initial ideas, and Rogue One, of course, and what happened with that. They have good characters. They have a good story. There's a beginning. There's a middle. There's an end. I hope there is never another Andor story for as long as I live, because I think that would lessen it. I think it would cheapen it. I'm not someone who needs more. I don't have a pop culture tapeworm in my system. I want it to breathe and live on its own. What I think, I hope will happen is that really good creative people who really like and understand structure, storytelling, and Star Wars get to tell really good Star Wars stories. That's what I want. One of the reasons I think that we run into challenge with like the comics, and I love the comics, is that after a while, there's no way possible, even in a fictional universe, that Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Organa could run into all these things they've run into. So we have to foster and create new characters that we care about, that we love, like the Ahsoka Tanos of the world, like the Din Djarins of the world, etc., and put a lot of life and breath into them, and let them rise up and have a good creative tell us that story. That's my hope.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I want to applaud that response and note, like, I think that's so important because that Star Wars and creatives got into a rough patch. And something I credit Dan's show with, the Star Wars media, fan media I consume, doesn't trade in the I know what's really going on behind the scenes, because nobody does. And they're just dealing with speculation and what somebody on YouTube said. So I appreciate that we shouldn't speak towards that. But there was a patch where it seemed like the relationship between Lucasfilm, the company, and its creatives was struggling. Perhaps most emblematic on Solo, when they had to let two creatives go and they had to bring in Ron Howard. And the full story of that is not public, but it comes out of creative differences. And I think the fan media makes too much hay out of when a movie is actively in development. Like Dan says, it's probably behind the scenes working for like 4 years, and it falls apart. And maybe they should never have told us it was in development until it was, about to really take off. But like, that's just the natural part of the studios of any company in Hollywood. So I think you're absolutely right to say that. Hopefully this repairs this and attracts some really high quality talent. And what inspires me, and I believe this goes back to I don't think it's in the Rinsler histories. I think it's in the Paul Duncan Giant Archives books. He talks about George Lucas had a vision that Star Wars could be something all of his different director friends could come in and kind of do their own version of. And that's what I want Andor to be as an inspiration to other creatives. It's like, oh, I didn't know Star Wars could be that thing. I don't want to do that, but I have this other way that I'd like to see if I could bend Star Wars in that direction and try it out that way. And I think it's, again, the two things that have invigorated me the most lately are Andor and the High Republic. And both of those are creator driven. They got a group together and they said, make what you want to make, put your highest effort into it. And, I haven't loved every single piece of the High Republic or of the Disney Plus, but they had vision, and that made them worth my time, even if I didn't like them each piece along the way. And I've really loved it along the way. So I completely agree with what Dan said. And I hope that that's what this really does is show them that hire somebody interesting, like Orion Johnson was when you hired him for Last Jedi. Let him cook or her cook, and let them do something really interesting. I also agree that it's time to just keep pushing the canon outward. We have now had an announcement that we're finally getting some novels set after Episode 9 and another. And I guess the Ryan Gosling movie is after that. Because I agree, the way we filled in, particularly between Star Wars and Empire, it's like, nobody had a day off for 3 years.
No, it's not credible.
So we got to go way out there, and I'm still hopeful about the James Mangold movie from the Dawn of the Jedi. I think that could be a really different type of thing. So, I think I think I feel very confident. This goes back. Jen and I were on Anthony King's Force Ghost Conversations, kind of doing an assessment of Kathleen Kennedy when those rumors about her retiring were false. And it's like, I think she's got a vision. She's had her successes and failures, but I think she's got a clear direction at the moment, and I'm excited to see what that direction is. And this was implied in Dan's comment, but it's worth saying. We're not smart enough to do it. Kathleen Kennedy is smart enough to figure it out, and Pablo and Dave and all those people. They deserve their paychecks, and they will give us perhaps not exactly what every single one of us wants, but maybe what we need. I'm almost doing Batman there, just to circle around.
No, amen. I agree. Absolutely.
Well, and Kathleen Kennedy does, we were blessed that, like George Lucas not only wrote Star Wars, but then also, helped make ILM and ran Lucasfilm. And it just like the company I worked for, Apple, where you had Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak start Apple, and then once they kind of go and it kind of becomes in the hands of different creators and all the committees and the the corporations and all that, you have to know to hire good people, and you have to just go. It's yes, there's more people in the mix now are creating it, but I'm like, just work on getting those right people, because the right people will make good content, and then just get behind them. And whether or not, like I said, we have seen such a change in Star Wars since Disney Plus came out. Of like, oh, we're gonna do it this, we're gonna do all this stuff, and they go, well, okay, now we're gonna do it this way. I'm like, I just want, I think we have seen the pinnacle with Andor, as far as like this is prestige television in a Star Wars wrapper, and just like, but on the other hand, I want to say, almost to kind of push back, Dan, whereas our generation has a Michael Jordan, in our case, who's the GOAT. That's something that I a little something about. But I want to have like A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and some of these. I want to have it challenged. I want to have everybody having their own GOAT of like, keep pushing for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be this style, the Andor style, but I want another Star Wars to come out and blow everything away. Keep trying for it, because you're going to get there. Because if you keep, like I said, keep playing the hits, you're not going to get there. But it's got to be something that maybe we weren't expecting, from an era we weren't expecting, something new, something old, or whatever. Keep pushing it forward, because there's somebody who's maybe a kid now, 10, 20 years, they're going to come up with an awesome story, and it's going to be something that I wish I was still around for, that kind of thing. But it pushes so that, that my kids won't just be like, man, it was that crazy thing my old man kind of loved, and I don't know what's happening to it now. Or they're going to be like, oh, man, did you see that? Man, my old man would have loved that. That's the kind of thing that I hope that this story does, is pushes it forward, keep trying something else, and, but just Lucasfilm, Disney Plus, like, let's find that balance between the shows and the films. Let's get that group experience happening again, and let's just make something we can all enjoy. Anyway, all right.
Oh, I hope that too. I'm sorry to disappoint, but there's no pushback. I agree.
Well, I was going to get
us
into
back
like
in the theaters is a big mantra, and I'm just going to throw it out
100%.
there. This is from my co-host PT on Long Take. Rogue One should have been in theaters the weekend after Andor came out. Man, would that have been great to zip
that would have
right out.
been that would have been pretty cool. It would have done well.
I think next year it turns 10, so maybe we'll get it as the May
That's
release
right.
next year.
That's right.
So.
Oh, just a quick, I know we have to get everybody out of here, but how many times have we watched Rogue One since Andor season 2 finished?
0.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I saw it on the big screen recently, and other cool things too. But I can't talk about it. Sorry.
Greg, how many times for you?
I've watched it twice since it ended. One time at 2 a.m. I think that day
Oh,
after
yeah.
I finished, I think
Yeah.
I rolled right into it. I don't think I finished it, but I watched the majority of it right after the Andor finale.
I fear it won't sync up as well as I hoped, so that's part of why I haven't.
I was very pleasantly surprised on my one, and I'm surprised I'm only one viewing behind Greg on Rogue One, or on any movie for that matter. But I would say that, boy, it was interesting to go back. I know we're running out of time, but that was kind of on my list as far as that. But I would say that I can't wait to watch it again after seeing it, because it's just kind of fun. Rogue One's always was kind of a comfort food. Now it just has a little extra flavor to it. And Dan, I hope you get a chance to fire it up and kind of like just bask in it. Because there's Saw, then there's full Saw Gerrera, and you're like, man, I missed me some full Saw going nuts. And I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera even more.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I wanted
Anyway.
more backstory on the Borg Gullet or whatever, but what can you do?
All right, don't you? All right. Before I get a little too high off my own righto, I just wanted to say I wanted to thank both of y'all for coming on. This was a fun episode to do, and it didn't feel like we were just playing the hits, man. This was some great conversation that I felt I was almost up to par with these two. But at any rate, so before we let everybody go and get back to their own podcast and other things they're talking about, Dan, what you got cooking on CWK and what's coming up?
So, as you've also graciously mentioned, we are looking at Andor season two, one episode at a time, to just really kind of dive into all of the ingredients that go into this wonderful souffle. Seriously, how many food analogies? What is going on?
Pizza. I just want to put it out there. Pizza. Bingo card, Jen. You got it. Sorry.
Andor is not pizza, though. That is not pizza. No, no. So we've got that this week, and depending on when this show airs, I do like little random ones too. This is Fan Home is this incredible company that does a subscription service where they give you these model kits, and the recent one is build your own Darth Vader. I've been talking about it a lot on social media. But each month, maybe sometimes a little bit quicker than that, you get a big kit to start building, and it's going to be, by the time you're done, it's going to be a 1:2 scale Darth Vader from The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, wow.
With lights, sounds, and I'm very fortunate that I am the head writer of it. So by the time it's done, you're going to get 200,000 words written from me about the dark side and dark side characters. So that is what is taking a lot of my time. My interview with Luca, who is the vice president of Fan Home, is on this week, and it's really cool to kind of see what goes into this thing. It's so much more intricate and involved with Lucas than you can imagine. When I say we, me, I've redone the website coffeewithkenobi.com, try to make it a little more splashy and interesting. And coming up very soon is the Coffee with Kenobi and Mouse Fan Travel cruise on the Disney Wish, where we're going to be hanging out together in the Hyperspace Lounge and having great times with members of the CWK Alliance. And it's not too late, although you're running out of time, to join us.
And all I'm going to say is shrewd thing to kick off Father's Day weekend, right? It's like, by the way, it's like, we're going to meet on Father's Day. I'm like, yes, because what would any Star Wars dad love more than his wife and kids is an excuse to go hang out with other Star Wars friends. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we are having a Coffee with Kenobi meetup at Jack Lindsay's Hangar Bar on the night of Father's Day, 7:30. And I didn't even realize when I set it up that it was Father's Day. But, what can you do?
Just good timing, that's all. Good timing. Will of the Force.
Don't think I didn't see that announcement and I plotted out. Well, how many hours drive is it from Boston? Too far, but it was tempting. I missed Jock Lindsay when I was down in Orlando 2 years ago, I guess now at this point. So I got to get down and back.
That would be a fun surprise.
I was checking flights, Dan. I was telling you, I was like looking, going, I never count me out until the bar closed, and you're like, apparently you didn't, Joe.
By the way, thank you both again for having me on. I was been looking forward to this conversation for so long, and I love good, intelligent Star Wars conversation between people who take the subject seriously but not themselves. And I love that. Like I hope. I mean, that's certainly how I feel. And I just appreciate you guys so much.
No,
yeah, and I think it would be a shame if we didn't embarrass you a little bit. So I hope you know how deeply we admire you and what you have created and the community you give. It probably goes unsaid too often how much of an impact you have. And I'm going to extend that as far as I was very inspired when you took a break this spring, because the content creator hustle is fun, but it shouldn't replace real authentic life experiences. And you've already listed a bunch of them: family, self-improvement, and education, or what needs to. So I found that very inspiring. And I assume you didn't get a lot of pushback other than we miss you. But I think it's great that you kind of role modeled that as well. And, maybe I should say no every once in a while. I spend a lot of time in this basement, so I'll get there.
Except if I'm trying to get a hold of you, then I'm like, no.
And the other way to embarrass you is to tell you that I continue to just savor the Star Wars Encyclopedia from DK that came out in the fall. It's become my morning ritual of I wake up, I pour the cup of coffee, and I read, a page or two and just kind of savor whatever I'm learning about. I know those books are not meant to be read cover to cover, but it's, it's, I won't say it's replaced like a religious ritual, but it's become a nice little kind of meditation. And while the kids are just kind of fuzzy and waking up, I kind of enjoy that. So that's a fantastic book if people haven't picked that up. Dan and a very large team of contributors.
Well, my goodness. Thank you. Really, that means the world to me more than you know. I really appreciate it. Truly. Thanks, brother.
Of course, my pleasure. And I am spending too much time on the internet. Like I said, long take review would be the thing I will plug. And then on social media at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON. But people have heard all those before. Greg, what about your show?
Oh my goodness. It just seems like it's all Andor all the time, but I would say that I have appreciated all the folks who have tuned in, who have asked us questions, who have given us, marks and reviews and so forth. It's been fun, and to be able to take these side steps from the main, from the main show when we talk about cards, collecting, community, but we're all sort of in the same boat. So I would just say if you have any questions or thoughts about it, you can always reach out to the program on Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky at Rebel Base Card. You can, of course, email the program, Greg at rebelbasecard.com. Shout out once again to Brad Smith, who sent a very nice email recently on that. And, of course, our friend, Sam Tashima, Daz Davies, Mary Purdue, all these folks who every time I see someone like queuing up the show, and I just go, wow, they're wanting to listen to this. This is nice. But it all kind of began because folks like Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi kind of set the pace, and they continue to do so. You're talking about like taking a break and things like that, showing us how it's done. But we get to kind of like see the success and see how Dan has gone into like not only writing for StarWars.com, but doing the books. And then you go, wow, man, this is coming out in print. Now I'm going to have Dan sign this. And it's kind of fun because everybody wins, when we're doing stuff together, we're having fun, we're helping each other out. And that's what this is all about, kids. It's so those the 20% who listen to the very end of this program. I'm just kidding. I love you all, but I'm like telling you, it's that much fun, and it's fun when I can get these folks together. That is a lot way smarter and so good. Anyway, alrighty, we're gonna let everybody go. We got second breakfast coming up. We're also gonna be talking on Breakfast Pack about Light and Magic. Hopefully, we'll get Anthony from Force Ghost Conversations on. We still have some Tales of the Underworld, because there's all this stuff that was released, and hopefully Visions doesn't like come out when we least expect it, because we're still talking about stuff, folks, because we have Celebration that just happened, and so Joliet Star Wars Day coming out, London Film and Comic-Con, we got a lot more stuff coming out. I want to hear about this cruise when it's all said and done, because it looks like it's going to be a blast. So anyway, all right, I'm going to let Dan Zehr, I'm going to let Greg Cass go, and we're going to get you back to your podcast playlist already in progress.
Who do you think it is?
I'm afraid they're waiting for you, sir. I told them I'd bring you down.
May I have a moment to collect my thoughts?
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.